Hello, my beautiful friends, my fellow space blobs, earth blobs, sparkly blobs, star blobs, whatever form you're taking. I am so happy to have you here. And you don't have to be a blob. You can be whatever form you want to be. And if you connect with that, then I love it. And I feel a deep connection with you if you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about those earth blobs, star blobs situation. Hi. Welcome to this space. My name is Sarah, and we are getting into how to be in this world as an intuitive, sensitive, creative person who's moving through the world trying to figure it out. And we're going to cover a topic today that I think is so powerful, so important, and has so little support for so many of us in the world. And that is creative shift points. These times in life when we can feel one form of energy dissolving, be that a project, an identity, a way of living, a place we're living, relationships. This can come in so many different forms, and yet it always feels so tender and vulnerable when we really notice that a certain energy, a certain way of moving through the world is dissolving, and we, no matter what we do, no matter how much we try to control it or be on top of it or problem solve it, it just seems to continue to be dissolving, and we keep getting this call to do this next thing, but yet we don't know what that is or how to work with that or how to bring that in. This is really a conversation for anybody who's going, what do I do with this? Why do I keep hitting this wall? Why does this not work out? Where do I go from here? How is this going to look? What do I do with any of this? This is a conversation for any of you who are moving through this, because this is something that happens throughout life. It happens so many times. And it's funny when I really take a moment to look back through my life so far, I'll realize that I have gone through a time like this so many times, dozens of times. And each time while I was in it, I felt totally terrified, totally freaked out about how it was going to work out. And I'll forget that I was so scared, because eventually the next thing came through, the next wave of energy came through, the next thing started happening. And so when I look back, it's like, oh yeah, that all made sense. But it's good to remember that we've been through these seasons before, and we felt just as weird about them. We felt just as concerned about how they were going to play out. And that this time we can do it and maybe have a little bit of tools and support. So that's what this conversation is going to be. I have been thinking about this in a really deep way for the last couple of years as I've been going through my own creative shifting and changing, and it's been totally terrifying and also really exciting. And so I've thought about this topic a lot, and it made me think too about something that Carl Jung wrote in one of his letters, in a collection of letters. He wrote this: "Your questions are unanswerable because you want to know how one ought to live." That is going to be a guiding light through this conversation today, and some of the ways that we are going to be exploring how to feel a lot more support as we move through these seasons of shift and change. Let's get into it. One of the loneliest things about going through creative shift points or big seasons of change in our lives is this sense that we have to judge ourselves, and that we might feel a little bit embarrassed about how we're changing or about the places we don't have answers yet. Our culture very much wants everybody to be just on the ball, fitting into a nice tidy box, being able to describe ourselves to others. And a lot of times that means that we will develop a sense of self-protection. We'll want to hide that we are struggling, or that we don't have the answers, or that it's really unclear how this is going to work out, or that a project just doesn't seem to be working, right? And we will start to feel more and more isolated in that. So one of the first places that I like to check in on myself when I'm going through change, when I don't know exactly how it's going to work out, or when I've pretty much put something out there in the world and it just has not connected, it has not felt good, and I feel like a failure. This is one of the first places I like to take care of myself. And that is in what shame are you feeling about your personal shift point? And a couple of questions that have really helped me so deeply to soothe myself, especially when I'm having kind of night fears and I'm feeling really scared. One of them is, who am I afraid is going to judge me for changing or struggling? Just putting it clearly. We might have people that really love us and care about us, but in our minds, we're thinking, if they realize who I really am, if they realize how I'm really struggling, maybe they won't love me anymore. We might also have people in our lives, coworkers or unhealthy family members, who actually are pretty judgy, so we might have a different mix of both people who actually would support us completely, but in our minds we are trying to protect ourselves, and maybe people who, they don't deserve our vulnerable stories, they don't deserve to hear the whole thing. But just knowing who we're afraid will cast us out, who we're afraid will judge us more deeply, can be really, really helpful. I know for me, that's helped me realize why I was so scared of something not working out. Because in and of itself, it didn't really matter. I'm still here, I'm still moving through. But what hurt was thinking about telling certain people and being open about that. So it's a really, really helpful place. The other thing I like to ask is just how I'm talking about the change that's happening in my life. I've had times where things just weren't working, and I would be really committed to talking about the sense of failure I felt in myself, the sense of lack I felt in myself, the sense of I'm doing something wrong, and how much I would just tell myself that story throughout the day. And it was really painful and really lonely. So just noticing what's there, how am I describing this change? How am I supporting myself? And there's no right or wrong here. It's mostly about noticing. And if you're feeling, in a creative mood while you're exploring this, you might want to start framing it in ways that feel soothing to you. Write some statements that can hold you a little bit through this time of tenderness. And this is one of the places that has helped me by far the most. The next place that is so helpful to check in on is timing and process. Once again, we're taught to be kind of mechanized in our lives, that we should already have had it done, and that it's all about being clear, about being fast, about more. This term growthism has started to pop up, and it's kind of like an extension of this idea of capitalism, right? This idea of growthism is that the only things that have value are the things that are more followers, more money, more capital, more of everything. And if it's not growing and expanding like this, it has no value. And this is not to say that feeling that expansive feeling and having things that grow isn't beautiful, because it is. It's one lens. It's one way of experiencing life. However, it does not encapsulate the whole. And one of the most important things about understanding ourselves when we're in shifting times, when energy is dying out a little bit over here and starting to build in another direction, is that we are naturally meant to be in these cycles of less clarity, of less focus, of maybe less clear answers. And so it's also really important to kind of look at how we are telling the story of our process. And do we judge how fast or slow we're going? So some of the questions that I like to ask are, what do you feel like you should have already completed in life? A lot of times I've realized, looking back through my life, how I pretty much have always felt like I should have already done X, Y, and Z, whether that be in the day or the season of life, and how much this just affects our day-to-day life. So just noticing, what do I feel like I should already have completed? And then some follow-up questions to that would be, why does it need to be completed more quickly or efficiently? And why do you need answers to come in on this? So just kind of thinking, what will that bring me? Is there a good reason why it needs to be faster? Will that really answer the question? Along with that, what would having this task accomplished or this question answered give me? A lot of times I think it's that idea of that there over there. So if I could just get this question answered, if I could just get this topic addressed, if I could just get this project completed, then I'll feel like I'm enough. Then I'll feel worthy. Then I'll feel safe. Then I'll feel like I have security. So just kind of thinking about the there that you think you're trying to get to. And is it really true that answering that question or completing that task will give you that? Is a great place to explore. Another thing that I like to explore with this is it okay to stop striving for the there over there? Is it okay for me to just Say, you know what? There is no there. Okay, here I am in this day. Here I am with this energy. Here I am with this question. That's that. I also like to, when I'm working with this idea of timing and process, I really like to work with the hero and heroine's journey, which I know probably all of us have worked with at least the hero's journey at some point, but you can just Google image search both the hero's and the heroine's journey and just look at the little circular charts they have there. And rather than thinking about where we are in that linear path, I think sometimes looking at that larger conversation, which is about change. I would say 2/3 of the hero and heroine's journey is about being in the unknown and the mystery and out of the mundane and out of the practical next steps forward, and is a lot more about the energetic process behind the scenes. Kind of putting ourselves in perspective there can be really, really healing and helpful and take some of the pressure off of where we feel like we need to hurry up and get back to the mundane and catch up with ourselves and take a lot of that time pressure off. The next part of this conversation I think is so important. It's one that I'm still working on deeply, and that is permission. The permission that no one else can give you. I know a lot of times creators like me or other creative, supportive voices out there will give you permission. They'll say, hey, you're allowed to do this. And even then, it's not enough, because there is a form of permission we each have to give ourselves to be here in this world, to belong in this world, and to walk our paths. And that's because every single one of us has to walk a path that is unscripted. Carl Jung, who I quoted earlier, but it applies here as well, also said that if the path before you is clear, you're probably on someone else's. I love that, because that's it. So often it feels like permission comes from doing it successfully and having the answers and people being like, that makes sense. But permission really comes from a place of deep belonging to ourselves. And I think it's just a matter of practice, giving ourselves that permission, giving ourselves that green light. And some of the questions that I like to ask are these. What are some of the elements of this path that I can honor in myself and my process? So often we will disregard all the signs and all the signals and all the elements that are sitting right there with us, waiting for us to work with them. So what can you honor on this path? What can you honor about what you've done, what you've experienced, what you've healed, what you've created, what you've dared to try doing? What is safe for me not to know or have answers about at this moment, at this time? You know, sometimes it's okay to not have the answers. As much as everything around us feels like, I got to get an answer to this, is it okay sometimes to maybe just be like, yeah, I don't know. This week I'm not going to be able to answer that question. Am I allowed to ordain myself as the one with the permission to move in my own unique way? Why or why not? Would you let yourself ordain yourself in your ultimate permission to move through the world? And if you have resistance there, what's coming up? This one can get pretty interesting. I honestly, it depends on the day for me. Some days I'm like, oh yeah, I'm ordaining myself. I'll do whatever I want. And some days it feels just like the most impossible thing to give myself the grace to be here in the way I want to be here. And I think that's why so many of these questions are going to be ones that I come back to again and again throughout the seasons of my life. I just have a couple final notes here when it comes to being in seasons of deep creative shift, deep life shift, deep mystery, deep not knowing, seasons of frustration or mystification. And I think these are really, really helpful reframings around a lot of things. So one is that mystery can be actively engaged in. A lot of times, you know, in the spiritual world and in these spaces, including myself, we'll talk about surrendering and letting go. And you'll hear that in so many different philosophical traditions as well. There's so much that's out of our control. And when we kind of allow ourselves to relax a little bit, energy can move through. And that is true. And that's beautiful. And of course, moments of breath and release are so important and valid in any lifetime. But it's also true that mystery isn't just about kind of laying back and just letting the world have its way with you. Mystery can be engaged with and connected with and spoken with. It's almost like its own character entity within the story of your life and within the creativity of your life. So practicing noticing what is there, what is tapping at your shoulder, what is longing for expression is really, really powerful. And I think even the simplest noticing of just maybe the energy we have in a moment, what we need in that morning, can be really, really powerful and empowering as well. So often we'll feel like I have no answers, I don't know what I'm doing, but the mystery is always asking for us to see and notice. And finally, manifesting and having and controlling aren't the point of this whole thing. I think that there's been a bit, over the last 10 years, there's been a real focus on manifesting, 10, 15 years, we've seen it. And there's something very appealing about it, the scripting and the vision boarding, and it's really fun. It can be really fun. But I think it also can kind of turn a corner sometimes where it just feels like the whole point of living a life is to want things and have them. And to just do that forever and ever and ever. And I think so many of us are tired. We are tired. Because manifesting and having and controlling and knowing that we have it is tiring. It's also a machine-like idea of what it means to live a life. I like to think about these times of shift as the real place of the soul song, the real place of beauty. We think of it as maybe getting the vision board to happen, getting our lives to happen, having the things. But it's such a small part of it. It's like a drop in the ocean. And everything in culture has told us it's about these moments of getting it and having it. When in fact, lived life is about everything else that happens before that and around that and after that. We're told growing up, I remember feeling distinctly as a kid that basically I was sold in general, innately in the cultural conversation that when I got to be a certain age, probably like 25 or something, I would just know I would have my job, I'd have my house, I'd do my thing, I wouldn't have questions. Well, we all know that that's not true. It's like the questions have only gotten more interesting as every year that I live. So maybe the shift point isn't this abnormal, shameful, embarrassing, scary thing that it feels like when we initially are entering into it. Maybe it's the thing. Maybe it's the most natural element of any lived life. And I just want to make space here at the end of this conversation for that possibility. These places that we feel like we have to get out of as soon as possible because we need to get back up on that horse, get back out into the arena, which has value. It's important for all of us to have those times in life when things are moving and flowing. And we don't have to deny ourselves that. However, isn't it okay that a lot of life is just this mysterious, slow, strange process and you're just in a day and you never know what's going to happen and the elements might not always make sense right away. And what if that can be the status quo? What if that can be the way that we move through these seasons? And rather than trying to get out of them as quickly as possible, that we lean in a little bit more and just get a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more curious and open up a little bit more because there's connection waiting for us there. And I think that's what I found. I started this chat with the idea of shame and judgment and isolating ourselves. And I think that's where this whole culture has control over how we move through life. As I've opened up and been more honest about how scared and freaked out and overwhelmed I am about change and shift, the more I've connected. The more I've had better conversations, the more I've found like-minded spirits in the world, the more that I've been able to be myself in the world. So that's a question. Is it possible that these creative shift points, these shifting energy times are really the soul song of the world? And what do we do with it then? What do we do with this longing and this needing then? I have loved spending this time talking about this topic. I could talk about it forever. And in fact, I will be offering up a little bit of a gentle opening to the New Year's over on my Patreon. It's going to be 4 weeks. So 2 weeks before New Year's, 2 weeks after New Year's, I will be offering up some really soft medicine to work with the mysteriousness and enter into the new year outside of this mechanized kind of intensity and into some really deep magic. I would love to see you there for that. We also have gatherings on Zoom for my upper tier, and I offer weekly conversations about how to be in our magic, how to be in our intuition. So I would love to see you there. It's a really beautiful space that I have been tending to and caring for already 4 years, and it has been really, really special to do that with you all. You can also find me on my website and my Instagram, and I love it when you are here with me. We are going to be having so many more chats like this and just developing a sense of really deep resonance. And for those of you who are here with me, I know you're feeling this, and I know that there's a reason that we're all connected here. So thank you so much for being here. I hope to see you here again very, very soon. Have a beautiful day, evening, night, morning, wherever you are, and we will talk again very, very soon.